So let's see, is the audio better now? Am I playing my... That sounds, yeah, that sounds better. It must have been the hardware encoder. Well, guess we're going with the old hardware encoder. I don't know why the new one was so bad. Oh, no. There goes the underwater sound again. What is going on? There's literally nothing on the internet that... Try one more audio setting, I guess. This is so not what I wanted to do on my stream. Monitor off, down mix to mono on. Okay, can I hear? Okay, I can hear myself now. So I'm gonna try that for a second, just in case it plays through. So I don't hear the actual, I don't hear it being underwater on the monitor. I only hear the underwaterness on the stream, which it's not doing with the monitor on. So if I turn the monitor back off, it seems okay. Okay, well, I'm just gonna go with that for a second. Oh, that was really annoying. Okay, let's get started then, I guess. Hopefully that doesn't come back, because I don't know what the actual problem was. But yeah, so I got this Gatsby site, and what I really need to do is I need to set up a test stream before I actually do my stream. But yeah. So I have started to put a bunch of console logs in this file in Gatsby. So if we go into packages, we go into Gatsby source, and it's in commands, and it's in build HTML. This is the file that we're dealing with right now. So you can see that there's this build pages command, and that's sort of the entryway into everything. The build pages command builds the renderer, do build pages, and then deletes the renderer. So I have a bunch of logs happening here now. That fixed it, by the way. I don't know what I did, because it was still watery when I restarted the stream. And all I did as of this stream is turn the monitor on and off, so I could hear it in my headphones, and then I couldn't hear it in my headphones. And I have no idea why that would have fixed it, because that doesn't make any sense to me. But I guess I'm gonna move this down so it's a little bit more. But yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea what the problem was, because Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, so I have a bunch of console logs in this file already. Some of them are logging out. There is a lot of output here, so I need to trim it down because this isn't really helping that much. And you can see that I started the build on my original stream before I restarted the stream, and it still was going, so I just had to kill it. So it is actually doing like this infinite loop thing. That looks like it's still logging out a bunch of stuff. So let's see. Working, 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 resolve, resolve, and then the third one never resolves. So that points to the worker pool somehow being the issue. Right, because it doesn't hit either of these rejects, and it doesn't hit right before resolve, so what is this? This is the whole promise map. So yeah, we never hit this, which means it's got to be in the render HTML worker pool function thing. So let's go find out where worker pool comes from, because I think it's an option that's passed into yeah. So we've got build pages, and build pages takes worker pool. The export in build HTML is build pages. So what we're actually going to need to do is go find build pages and where it's actually used. It's probably in build somewhere. So here's build pages. What's build HTML? Is that an import? Yeah. Okay, so build pages is called here. The worker pool is here. What is the worker pool? Worker pool is utils worker pool. So let's pull this out again. Source, utils, worker, pool. And then there's a bunch of workers, and it basically has create. And there is no, I guess just worker is the render HTML, where the render HTML function comes from. Right, because you get this worker pool from workerpool.create. Worker pool doesn't have anything attached to it. Right? So it's got to be, so just worker has to be the thing that we are looking into. So just worker, blah, blah, blah. New worker, worker.hello. What is hello? Hello is, okay, so new worker from a file. That means /child. So child is the worker. We get page data and render HTML. So render HTML is what we want. So now we're like 7 files deep into debugging this. It was really funny because all of the static site generators that were Webpack based, like Gatsby, all pulled code from the static site generator Webpack plugin that Mark built like 4 years ago. So you'll end up just finding it in random places. Like, we pulled this code from static site generator Webpack plugin. So we have render HTML. So we probably need to go into this and see what's happening here. It's being caught and rejected. Okay, so let's get into this file. Source utils worker render HTML. open the sidebar, if we can get the sidebar back open. So now we are in, what did I say it was? Source utils worker render HTML. Source utils worker render HTML. Okay, so now we've got this other file that we have. Let's get that back away. And now basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting console logs in this and seeing what happens. So yeah, so the issue is that on my blog, which is a Gatsby site that uses a couple themes and things like that, if you look at this output right here, and ignore the logs that these are my personal logs, so we can just ignore them. You can see that I'm doing basically a Gatsby build on the site. It runs through a bunch of steps that work, and then it hits the building static HTML for pages step, and on page 100, just never finishes. And there's no output. If I use if I run this with debug, which I did earlier, there's no useful output. There's no errors. So I'm trying to figure out where it's getting hung up. And hopefully that will point me to a place where Gatsby is either swallowing an error or not doing some computation or something like that it should be. And hopefully we can get a PR into Gatsby to... so that if this happens to somebody else, the error gets thrown and shown to the user. So right now I'm deep in I'm 7 files deep right now because so this is the original file that I was checking. It basically takes this worker pool as an argument, does a build pages on it. The build pages has a bunch of logs in it which have these resolves. So what we're getting is so the function that is the render HTML queue. So basically we've got a queue where we're rendering all of the HTML out. And this is a file inside Gatsby, so we're in the internals right now. Over that set of, is there something unique about your data? No, I don't think there's really anything particularly unique about my site right now. So the issue is that I don't know what the problem is, right? And Gatsby isn't telling me. Gatsby is just hanging and not finishing. Because if I rerun this, we end up stopping here, and it just never stops. It never finishes. So my Netlify builds right now are just timing out because it takes longer than half an hour to finish. And if we look at these log outputs that I put in, we get 3 workings, and working is right here. So it's inside of this map. And then we get 2 resolves. And resolve is down here, right? So it's got to be something between these two that's sort of swallowing this, swallowing our, the build never finished and it's just stuck. It never updates again. It never does any other work. So right now I've narrowed it down to this worker pool render HTML function, right? And to find out where that render HTML function comes from, I had to follow it through a couple of different files, which I did earlier. And then we hit eventually this file, which is the render HTML. So workerpool.renderHTML is from this file. So now I'm putting in logs here to see if we can do this, basically the same thing we're doing here. I want to match up which ones are coming in, which ones are actually getting handled. So this resolves. So what I'll do is console.log. And if you meant something else by unique about my data, let me know, and I can try to... try to explain something different. So basically, if I successfully find what's happening here, this will result in a PR to Gatsby core, because this is something I would consider a bug. Okay, so now we should get a render HTML for each path. We'll get it trying and whether it failed or not. So hopefully that'll give us some more information. So here's the moment that we care about. There's actually a lot of output here, so I'm probably just going to bring this into a different window so that we can... No, so in reality, there might be something here that I'm doing that is magical. The problem is that my site has lived for a fairly long time, so there's a lot of code in it, and recently I ripped everything out and used the official themes. Because I worked on the implementation of gatsby-themes themselves. So when we shipped the official themes, I just swapped all of my data over to use the themes. And there could be something left in my site that is doing something weird, because I used to do a lot of weird things. But the problem is I don't know yet, because it's not telling me. So it doesn't seem like it makes it. So we've got working, right? We've got a block of render HTMLs here. Then we've got more render HTMLs here. So I don't know if this building static HTML for pages is relevant as a log or not. So probably we want to jump one level above this to where we initialize the worker pool. But the logic here basically passes this worker pool back and forth. So it's a little tricky to figure out where it's actually getting hit. So the page segment, as far as I know, is a list of pages that need to be rendered. Let's log out page segment.length here and see if that's a useful thing to look at. I'm trying to find a way to identify the different groups, because as far as I can tell, there are 3 groups of worker pools that are running, or three iterations of the worker pool, and 2 of them succeed and 1 of them hangs, and I need to drill into the one that is hanging and find the individual path. Okay, so we've got 50, 50, 48. So this would be the end. So this is why we're getting 100, right? So if there are 3 worker pools that get instantiated, they get instantiated with a limit of 50 URLs to render. So this pool is instantiated with 50 and works. This pool gets instantiated with 50 and works. This pool gets instantiated with 48 and fails. So it looks like the one that we care about, since we have page segment here, and it is called paths, we can actually log that out and add that. Right? So if we do paths.length, that will tell us which iteration we're in. So render HTML. And we'll prefix it with this, I guess. Paths.length. So that'll at least tell us which iteration we're in. And we probably want this. Are we seeing try and caught here? So try, try, try. I don't think we ever see caught. We don't. I just did a Command F in my terminal to see if there was output there. There is not. So my guess is that it's getting stuck here somehow. And really, I'm going to put this in, I'm going to prefix all of these logs with this number so that I can tell which ones are coming from the one that I care about and which ones are not. Okay. Save. Let's kill this process again because it's still running, and then rerun it. So yeah, there's ostensibly no magic going on here. It's just a regular Gatsby site that has a problem somewhere, and that problem is getting swallowed. We never even hit the 48. So the 48 worker pool never starts, right? Because these are all 50s. Oh, there's 48. So 48 is interleaved with everything else. Okay, so let's add the 48 to the other log as well. So that we can get a little bit more information about which one of these is trying and failing. So we're going to go back into this log output and see which 48 is the last one to run, I think. Will do it for us, but if it doesn't, because these are promises and they do run async, we might have a problem. So one of the questions that I have is, we get this console.log, which is this HTML component renderer log, and then in the callback for this HTML component renderer, we do another log, and we never see any error. So if we get stuck inside of HTML component renderer, if it has like a promise inside of it or something like that, and that isn't getting resolved, that could be where we're getting stuck. So let's check out these 48s. They seem to come in blocks of 3, all of them. Is there a 2 here? Did I see a 2? I did see a 2. Okay. Maybe it's this page. Because we do, let's see, we do these 2. Okay, that's a 3 too. It just gets this. Hey, Trevor. So my blog is stalling, basically, right? So if I go all the way down here, for about a week or 2 now, since a couple streams ago, my blog has been hanging and not building on Netlify. So the things I've been adding to it have not been shipping. So I'm in Gatsby internals doing some debugging, trying to figure out where this is actually failing to continue. So, yeah, ruh-roh. So what we've established for now is that there's this build HTML file that runs a worker pool, and it runs a worker pool for batches of up to 50 URLs to render the HTML out. And each of the batches of 50 is fine. And then the last batch, which happens to have 48 in it, never finishes. So what I'm looking for is what URL is not finishing here, which I think I might have just found by looking at this. So getting started with Snap and user authentication part 2 never finishes. Doesn't look like anyway. The problem is that all of these promises and the output is interleaved, so it's hard to tell which thing is happening at which time. Which is why I have these prefixes on it. Well, we basically have 3 logs, right? So if we look at an overworked worker pool, well, so the issue is that it never finishes, right? So for some reason, I feel like it's either like waiting on 49 promises to resolve, and the 49th promise never resolves, so it never stops, because there is no 49th promise. But yeah, let me lock these const equals paths, right? Nope, we're in the wrong thing here. I need to do it the other place. Render HTML. So we're in here. I'm going to do is third batch paths dot length equals 48. And then inside of these logs, I'm just going to do like if is third batch, we log, and if it's not the third batch, then we don't. That'll at least get rid of all of the 50s and stuff like that. The problem is that I can't actually batch this console. Well, actually, does Node have console group? If I can type. Okay, so it does have console group. Let's check out what Node console group looks like in the API docs. The other problem is that if I do a console group, I'm not sure that because it just stops running at some point. So I need all of the individual logs for something. Increases indentation of subsequent lines by 2 spaces. So I guess that's not really what I wanted. Time log, trace, warn. For some reason, I thought that console log in the browser gave you a nice little representation of everything. So I need to run console group, I need to run these things, and then I need to run another console group, I guess, or a console group end. Is that the API decision here that they've made? Okay, so it's just indentation. That's annoying. But is better than nothing. So let's do that. Let's console.group it on the path. Americans start streaming at midnight. What time zone are you in, Lacoste? Let's see. So one of the problems here is that when this runs, I don't know which of these is going to dot actually happen. So we'll just spam it everywhere, I guess. Then we have this is third batch if statement that we can log like this. And then I guess we want something before this to let us know that this is a new batch, right? So let's see what that does for us. 11:45 in Germany. Yeah, that is late. I've considered streaming earlier some days actually because this is not the first time that I've heard of people in time zones like that wanting to participate in streams. So I've actually thought about doing like an 8 a.m. stream or something like that, which would move it back 4 or 5 hours or something like that. Okay, so that didn't do... Oh, there we go. Oh, but it's logging that out for everything too. So we need to do one more of these. Harder, easier, neither than what? For who? Like, is for me or for other people? For me, this is a good time because I work out from 11:30 to 1 or 1:30, which means that I get home, I have time to shower, I have time to eat a burrito or something like that, and then I can start my stream. So I get a good, like, if I'm in a group, I can go for like 3 hours and it's not a problem. Oh, that is so loud. Why is that so loud? Oh, thanks for the follow, or thanks for the sub, Corey. Yeah, you didn't hear anything because I don't have my desktop audio going through. No, it's entirely my problem and my fault. But now you have access to this if you want to use it. That got approved like today or something like that. Yeah, actually today at 3 a.m. my time it got approved. So I don't know who was working on that, but it's okay. So one of the problems here is that we constantly have this happening. The origin of Party Corgi. A couple years ago, I was looking for, I don't know what I was looking for, but I found basically that image on the internet. That image on the internet has since been deleted from wherever the hell I found it. So at this point, the only place that you can find that image is in a tweet that I made a couple months ago. And I started putting it in Slack channels that I was in a year or two ago, maybe a little more. And one day I decided I was going to change my Twitter name, and I changed it to Party Corgi. And Yeah, so people ended up really liking the Twitter name for some reason, and they start using it to refer to me now. So I guess I have branded myself Party Corgi accidentally through being the steward of this GIF that no longer exists on the internet. That is the origin of Party Corgi. Let's see. So let's do this instead, because I'm having trouble tracking all of these things. Instead of paths.length, because now we're not actually doing these. Let's do 1, 2, and 3, I guess. Because we are already blocking those from being rendered for anything else, so that's that. Maybe that makes it a little easier to deal with. Yeah, the destroying my ears is definitely a me problem. I need to normalize my audio and stuff like that. And I actually didn't look to see if the desktop audio was picking that up, but it should be. So I just have the desktop audio muted right now. Okay, blah, blah, blah. We're still logging out a lot of paths that I feel like we shouldn't be logging out, but... Okay, so... Where's that coming from? That is just the path. Is this somehow related to micro front ends with Jason's stream? This particular stream that I'm doing right now is not. It's only incidentally related if you consider the fact that the reason my site is probably broken is related to the fact that I deleted a bunch of my code and used themes instead. So this is nothing that you can probably use for themes right now. But I do need to debug this issue in a site that is actually using themes. So I don't know. It might turn out to be theme related. If it is theme related, that would suck because that would mean that we have a weird bug that I hope nobody else is hitting. As far as I know, I'm the only person hitting this. So this is 1, 2, 3. So let's just keep doing the paths here instead of these additional. Make it a little easier to read this output. Path, path. Do you work a lot with Laravel? Is that why you're getting Laravel job offers? Also, one of the really nice things about like front end work is that a lot of it happens in open source land. So there are a lot of people that write JavaScript, and if you just start sort of blogging and building open source projects and things like that in public, it goes a long way to actually getting you job opportunities. Okay, this is interesting. Where are those coming from? Anyway. I wonder if those are this. Nope, those are not this. Where's that log coming from? It's not coming from here, it's not coming from there, it's not coming from there. Path, 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 caught. There is no, those should not be logging out. What is going on here? Is it interleaving with a different log? Yeah, I really think that the sort of like API plus JavaScript paradigm is a lot nicer to work with. especially since basically when you think of everything that becomes an actual product or like an actual service or something like that, and you think of the things that you're like, oh, this one obviously is a website and not an app. And you think of things like the New York Times, right? They're a newspaper. They're literally putting out content that people read. They are one of the things that you would think of and be like, oh, this is obviously going to be a site. Like I can do this with Laravel or server-side framework or whatever, right? Or static HTML. And when you start thinking about the features that the New York Times actually uses, they have dynamic ads and user login and auth restricted pages and comments and customized dashboards and things like that, right? So like really anything that you start these days that you intend to productize is going to be an app and not a site. But yeah, a lot of people still do exactly what you're saying, and like they'll go with the back end work because it's familiar to them, rather than going with the API plus front end work. Actually, know a couple of companies that are like that do things like that, where they try to do a server-side rendered approach, and they do the server-side rendering with like Golang or something like that, and then they realize that they actually need yeah, it is the police. They have not come to get me yet, so I think I'm good for now. I don't know where this log is coming from. I probably put in a stray log in there, and it's just messing with things. In any case, let's keep going. So 1, 2, 3 for that, 1, 2, 3 for that. See, they're all generally together here. It's also hilarious that this is logging out in between. Does console group actually log that out? Is that what's happening here? Let me go back and check my... It does. It does log that out. Okay, so what I don't need is that. So let's do this, and let's do that. And that will get rid of that other problem with the duplicate log. But yeah, so I've seen plenty of people, like, because they are familiar with the paradigm of like rendering HTML from a server with some language, will use like Golang or something like that, because people are moving to Golang these days. And they'll start building their application, and they'll be like, oh, well, I guess we need something like React or whatever. And they haven't been paying attention over the last couple of years. Or they're more comfortable generally. There we go. That output is much better. And what they'll end up doing is they'll stick React on the front of a static, like a server rendered Go app. And then they'll be unable to do things that they want to do to make development easier, because they have to do it in both places. And you end up having to write a bunch of code in Golang to do one thing, and then do the same thing in React later with different code. So you're basically just duplicating your work. But a bunch of people don't think about that when they get started. Is this 2 not running for that one? Or is that... Do we think that building static HTML for pages is just punching out the second log here? Or should I be using Reporter for this? We probably don't even have access to Reporter. Hey Ben, how's it going? Thanks for the raid. It's not trivial to implement a complicated business process without MySQL. Sure. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not saying don't have a backend, but what I'm saying is, like, abstract your backend behind an API and give the API to the front end to implement. Because then you can do whatever you want with the front end. Like, they're two separate things, right? You have a backend, it does communication with your database or whatever, your microservices, etc. You don't want to stick a front end bolted onto your back end. Things are going interestingly. We're debugging this, basically. We're debugging an issue where I have my blog and it reaches there's this worker pool that Gatsby uses to build HTML. And the worker pool works in batches of 50 by default. So it gets through the first batch, it gets through the second batch, and then it hits the third batch of 48. And it doesn't do anything. So it just sort of hangs. That's a bug. Yes, that is definitely a bug. The problem is I don't know what the bug is. So we're trying to figure out the place at which it stops processing. And it looks like this tags API might be it. So let's get rid of those resolve calls, I guess. And one of the other issues is console logging, but it looks like Gatsby is stomping some of my console logs. Oh, yeah, you did the Blue Yeti today with the PC? That's awesome. I started my stream today and I sounded like I was underwater. So I had to spend like the first 5 to 10 minutes of my stream playing with OBS. And I still didn't actually do anything to fix it. I just think it like kind of fixed itself over time. So that went great. This project is my blog, so it is on GitHub. If you want to check out the actual code and like play along with it and like do this with me. It's this repo right here. And it'll be the Gatsby 2 branch, which is the default branch. Forgot to put the stream key. Yeah, that'll do it for sure. What were you working on your stream, Ben? I think I saw you might have been doing some theme stuff. Let's see, where's my logs here? Okay, so we're logging this out, we're logging that out, we're not seeing this at all. It's just hanging. So it's got to be in this render function, right? It's got to be, I wonder if it's in the require. Huh. Okay, let's go to HTML component renderer because I think we've established that this is where the problem is. HTML component renderer path. Oh no, this is going to be a dynamically written file. Oh no. That's not good. Okay. Let's log out that path. Instead of logging this out, let's do that. Wrapping things up to submit my submission to the theme jam. Just when I have some more tests I want to run before submitting it. Dope, dude. Yeah, that'll be fun. I think there's like a bunch of submissions to that thing right now, so I'm pretty excited for how well that has been going. Okay, so this is all just the same render page. Let's just cat that. Oh, this uses UMD? Ugh. Why does it use UMD? Oh, I guess it's a Webpack thing, so whatever. That's fine. I thought this was a custom UMD thing. Okay, so now what we're doing is digging into a file that basically got Webpacked. Is super mangled, etc. This includes Formix, so this is the entire thing, isn't it? Render page includes the entire site. Okay, that's going to be not great. All of these are externals. Woof. This is 50,000 lines of JavaScript, minified JavaScript. So we are probably not going to be able to get into this file and log anything useful out of it. Only 50,000. So we need to find a different way to debug this because, yeah, there's no way. This includes literally every library that's included in my entire blog. So well, that's what that is. But if it's great interpreted languages, why not compile it into an unreadable mess? So this in particular is not a, how do I say this? This is an artifact that is used to render the HTML. So it is a compiled thing that we then use to compile something else, basically. This render page.js is not like a file in the Gatsby library that we then use to do this. It is a file that we need to generate from the client-side bundle and then run in a slightly different way. Have I seen Rodrigo Pombo's new Gatsby theme? I don't think I have. Let's check it out. Oh, you mean the one where he scrolls? Yeah. I guess I can keep typing this. 5, 2, 4, 4, 4, 3, 6, 8, 8, 2, 7, 43, 296. Okay. Yeah. I did actually see this. This is actually really cool. So I haven't looked in to see how he does this part, and how it triggers, basically. I don't know how he associates like code blocks with specific pieces, but this is a very, very cool thing. And the sort of like storytelling. And he did this on top of a Gatsby theme blog, it looks like, which is absolutely dope. So here's the theme. Let's look at the demo. Content, posts. So he has a component called wave section. And wave section is used around, let's see, everything it looks like. And then it's probably, yeah, okay, cool. So it basically does an animation from one code block to the next code block. That's pretty cool. Huh. Well, that is very cool. So yeah, if anybody wants to check out Gatsby themes, go check out Rodrigo's theme, because it looks very cool and also has a pretty dope implementation too. So, yay. Thanks for the shout out, Trevor, on Twitter. Yeah, okay, cool. So let's go back to debugging this, because this is awful. Still can't recreate the Apple Watch 2 page where the full screen section gets sticky, scrolls in itself, and then seamlessly goes to the next session. Yeah. Well, you can say that I maybe built Gatsby themes so that somebody else would actually build my vlog for me. Which is what ended up happening. Now I'm using a blog theme that was built by, Amberly and Jackson at this point, and other people, but, so I didn't have to build my own blog. So you let that be a lesson to you. If you build the infrastructure, somebody else will build the thing on top of it for you, if you make enough noise about it. Okay, so this component renderer is the problem. Right? So I think that we've established that. At this point, he lives on Twitch. Yeah, Jason has definitely been doing a lot on Twitch. He started doing streams like I'm doing right now as well, which is very cool. He did some After Effects stuff yesterday, which was pretty dope. At this point, I think he's streaming more than I am. But I use my... Yeah, okay, I remember you being there, actually. I had to jet and go do something, but... Man, we don't even get through the tags API page. Ooh, wow, this is not good. Where else are we? So do we think the tags API is just getting stuck here? Or do we think the resolve is stomping the output? Because I think it's getting hung up on the require, which is really weird. So let's do this. Cons HTML component renderer equals this, and we return dot default. So this has to be an object. And default will be this function. This function will return what? So this default takes a path, callback, right? So then we return, like, I don't know, some weird HTML body that's like, hello. Right, and that should work. And I don't know why Prettier isn't doing my formatting, because I thought I had that set up, but apparently I do not. So if this succeeds, that means that the HTML, that the render page is actually where our problem is, and we are going to have a much bigger problem getting to that then. This is going to be a much deeper dive than I thought it was going to be. Okay. So I guess that console group never ends. It looks like we got past where we were before, maybe. Right, we never call the callback. That's the problem. Okay, so that should work better. And if this works, then we should be able to see the output that we just manually generated in public. So we'll go and check that afterwards too. Yeah, looks like it made it through everything. So that's the problem. So come on, get me to the end of the build process. I've got a million of these warnings, which I need to address at some point, but are not actually a problem as far as I know. These warnings are, I made an import incorrectly in the design system that I was building, and then didn't do the export, and that's that. Which has been in my blog for months and months and months at this point, so I don't think is the issue. But it does seem that we're hung again. Or maybe we're not hung and it's just giving me the same output over and over. Yep, so we're just getting a lot of that output repeatedly. I don't know if this is supposed to be, maybe this is the problem, maybe it's looping. Maybe it's trying to write these out or something. Something's running. And the only output that we're getting... Okay, so that was the issue. So the issue there was, I think that our feed, the Gatsby plugin feed, was running through the Gatsby HTML. But okay, so we have a problem here. And the problem is HTML component renderer, which is render page, which is not good because that's a dynamically constructed page, or a dynamically constructed file, which means that we're going to need to put logs in a second file such that it gets created into that file such that we get logs out. So this is going to be a dive at this point. And if we do public, where are the HTML files? .html, index.html. See, so all of the .html files now have that custom output that we had over here. Oh no, so it is actually HTML component renderer. That is the problem. Woof. And it doesn't throw an error, and it doesn't resolve, and it doesn't reject. And if all of that is true, then this should not work. Right? If all of that is true, everything that I just said about HTML component renderer, then this catch should never fire because it is not a promise. I'm hoping I'm wrong, by the way. That was me talking it through such that I hope that what happens right now is that error gets logged. And if that error gets logged, then... Oh, yeah! Nope, cannot read catch if undefined. Never mind. That was not... We still have a problem. Because that's not actually a promise. Well, it was worth a shot. Where did I actually put this catch? Yeah, I put it on the outside of that. That's exactly where I thought it would have been. Okay, well, that's unfortunate. Now what? We've proved that the problem is actually in render page. So let's go back to Gatsby and with our head between our whatever. This is not good, dude. This is such a dive. We are making progress, so we did discover something new. New information is always good because it means that we are learning something about the problem that we're trying to solve. So while it is very frustrating that I cannot figure out what is going on here, the fact that we're incrementally getting very small bits of information that can point us in the right direction is good. Where's .cache? Gatsby has a cache folder, a cache dir, and I'm wondering. Best puzzle game on Twitch. Can we do a Twitch debugs Gatsby? Is that what we're playing right now? Super expert mode. Okay, so we're gonna look at page renderer. We have to go find out what writes out render page, right? So let's look for render page. Because this file is getting written out somehow, and I think it's getting written out by Webpack, but I'm not sure that it's getting written out by Webpack. If you want to read more about the way that HTML generation works, because what I'm about to look into does not actually exist in this doc, this is the place to do it. Gatsby docs HTML generation. And basically, Webpack's something that builds a render page.js. The render page.js takes the page path and renders the HTML, which we were just looking at, which is what this is. So this HTML component renderer takes the path and a callback and renders the HTML. And then we output a file with the HTML string. So the problem is in this default call, which is this render page.html or .js function. And then for each page in Redux, call render page, which is exactly what we were just looking at. The entry point for that is static entry. So let's go check out static entry, because we're going to have to put logs into this file somehow. So this is static entry. This is basically what will happen. So here it is. There's page path. So this is the function that we actually end up using. So let's go into this file and start logging stuff out, because this will be the next best place to do something. Where is that file? I always do that. I'm like, let's go look at this file. And I didn't actually look at or remember what file that we were actually going to go into. Okay, cache. So we're in the Gatsby package. We're going to get out of commands. We're going to get out of utils. Get out of dist. There's a cache dir here. This cache dir gets copied over into .cache. So now that we're doing this, what we actually have to do after this is remove .cache every time we run. And we change something so that, because otherwise this file won't get copied over. So this is now getting a little bit more manually intensive here. Where's our static entry? We don't need the develop static entry. We need just the static entry. Come on, static entry. Why can I find this one and not the other one? What's the actual name of this file? It's just called static entry. Ugh. There we go, static entry. So we're now ostensibly three files deep, but we're like 14 files deep after tracing through all the code paths. So let's try this. Let's start looking for .then. Nope. So it doesn't look like there's any. So there's a couple try catches, right? Return null. Huh. Interesting. That looks like our most prime candidate. So let's do page data JSON. Our error. And 2 new lines. So this is basically what I'm doing here is I looked for things that looked like they could be problematic. And one of the things that I'm trying to look for is something that isn't returning or is over counting the number of promises that need to be returned or something like that. In this case, we've narrowed it down to a single run of the render page function, which means that the render page function is not returning an error somehow, or it's not throwing or doing something like that when it needs to. Which means that the thing that I just looked at is returning null, right? And because it's returning null, it might be doing something like that, right? Which doesn't look like it's even being called, so that is not the actual. We're going to leave that log in just in case, but the next step is to go to the actual function itself. Wherever I can find this. Oh, right, I already messed up, people. Okay, let's do rmrf www.cache. And we're just going to stick this on the front of this because we're going to have to do it every time. So because that cache gets copied over from the Gatsby npm module, we have to blow away the cache if we change things so that it gets recopied over. And we'll see if that does anything for us. We can probably get rid of basically all of these logs here. Did we only make it to 50 this time? Did I actually break something? Well, that's not good. I further broke it. I think. We can get rid of all these logs now, so I'll do that while it's doing the other thing. We'll keep the isThird batch and the console group just in case we want any. I think just in case we want any logs here. We probably want the 3 to show up. HTML component renderer takes a path. I wonder if we can add a sneaky third to this. So I'm going to add a third arg, which is going to be the isThird batch, right? I think that gets rid of most of our... So we're still only doing 50. I did something that chopped us down, and now we're only getting a single worker pool out of it. So maybe what I do here is I restart from scratch, and I start putting new logs in. And I can do that by doing a yarn install on the node modules. Because if I don't do that, yeah, I think at this point, how would you replace all these console logs with the debugger? You wouldn't. I have no idea what you're doing, by the way. I'm basically console logging a bunch of stuff until I find out what the potential problem here is. And the problem here is that this never stops. That's the problem. So the description of the problem is fairly simple. When I go to do a Gatsby build on my project, it never finishes. And it stops right here at this log. So everything that I'm doing now is to narrow down the location of the potential problem, which we have narrowed down into a single file at this point. So what I'm going to do is rerun. I'm going to remove node modules. I'm going to rerun yarn. And then see what happens to the build. And then we're going to continue from there so that we have a bit of a clean slate when we start thinking about this render page. Because, yeah, so you can see that this file got rid of all the changes that I made because we just deleted it and yarn installed it. Build HTML should be the same thing. Yep, it's clean now. This is good because now we don't have the extra logs. Static entry is there, which is good, and it's clean as well. So now we have none of the logs that we put in before, and we're starting basically from scratch with a new location to start logging from. Where is our default export? There we go. So in here, we're going to console.log entering page path. And this is going to give us a lot more output. Because we're no longer trimming it down to that batch of 48. So this will log for all 148 runs of render page. Which is why you do things like this on minimal repos if you can. Unfortunately, this issue is only popping up in my blog, so that's where I have to do the debugging. Apparently my yarn version is out of date. Okay, this is where it fails usually. It'll hit 100 at some point. It only hits 50 now. Literally only hits 50. It was hitting 100 before, now it only hits 50. Woof. I wonder if that one node. Why choose yarn over npm these days? partially because I don't like NPM as a company, but I switched over to Yarn years ago at this point. And like technical reasons to choose Yarn over NPM are Yarn has workspaces and NPM doesn't. So if you want to work on multiple packages, you have to use either Yarn or you have to use Lerna or you have to use like an additional tool. If you use Yarn, then when you need to work on multiple packages, you can just swap over into a workspace and start working on them. So that's the main reason, the main technical reason that I use Yarn over NPM these days. Also, Yarn seems to be doing a lot of really cool development with PNP and things like that for Yarn 2.0. And with the way that NPM, the company, is going right now, I think everybody that was working on the NPM CLI has left at this point. And they were understaffed to start with, so I think it only had a couple of people at most. So if you are looking for something that is probably going to have new features in the future and bug fixes and things like that, that is probably no longer the NPM CLI. Whereas they did a pretty good job of keeping it up to date in the past. I think that all of the people that were doing that work have now left the company. So Yarn now still has people staffed on it. And 2.0 is shaping up pretty nicely. Okay, so there's all of these renders, and then it gets stuck on one of them. Where do we think it gets stuck? Is the entire batch not starting? Is that our issue? Man, I think we identified that it is actually getting to this, right? Because if we swap that out for the actual, if we swap this out for a stupid function that does nothing, then everything works. So let's do that one more time. Just to make sure that with the clean slate that everything still works as we thought it would. What is my opinion if GitHub acquired NPM? My opinion of what if GitHub acquires NPM? Like which command line client I would use? Also, yeah, GitHub is technically Microsoft, but also operating as a separate company right now, as far as I know. Less about the CLIs, more if they acquired it and took reins of the registry. I think that GitHub is in an interesting place right now because they launched a competitor. That competitor is supposed to be okay, so that worked. That once again did exactly what we thought it was going to do. Did I mess up this log? Did I actually remove the log that I was trying to log out when I did that? Why is that not calling rendering? Oh, right, because it never calls this file. Never mind. That's fine. Yeah, so GitHub is an interesting spot because they've launched a registry that is like a registry for multiple different languages and packages and things like that. And they have the backing of Azure because they are Microsoft, and they have a bunch of other things. Yeah. I think that Docker royally messed up its attempt to build, deploy, and be the authoritative operator of Docker Hub, which under the hood is basically just a container registry. So the container registry got commoditized very quickly. And right now, if you want something personally, or for a bunch of companies that I know of, they use like either Google's registry or Amazon's registry. Quay.io was a different registry at one point. So Docker messed up with their game plan on Hub and the game plan on everything surrounding Hub, to the point that they're basically an enterprise services company now. So that would be pretty easy for GitHub to take. I think NPM is going down a similar route where they're losing a lot of goodwill, and at some point they're going to need to get acquired. They claim that they have another year of revenue, but they are, remember, VC backed. They are running out of money. They are apparently making enough money just to run things at break even, but they are not making enough money to pay VCs back, and that's the big rub for NPM. So I think if anybody acquires NPM, GitHub is in a great position to take advantage of that. Because suddenly it becomes much easier to afford cloud hosting services if you own a cloud hosting service, right? So I don't know what GitHub is running on right now, but if they moved over to Azure, they could probably get like family pricing, quote unquote, for Azure services, and then it would suddenly cost them significantly less to run the NPM registry. GitLab is still independent as far as I know, yeah. I don't see GitLab acquiring something like NPM. I don't see what good that would do them. Unless they wanted to try to start competing with... Technically, you can log into Azure with GitHub now. Yeah, I mean, GitHub is a login, right? GitHub has that SSO thing that everybody else has too. I actually really like the idea of a GitHub registry. I think that would be a step in the right direction, but I think the more interesting path is entropic or entropic. I want the GitHub link. I don't want all the news articles. There we go. So entropic is significantly more interesting to me than GitHub acquiring NPM. I would love to see entropic be the thing that GitHub deploys. But, you know, I think it's still fairly early days. Yeah. I don't know. It's really interesting. It's got its own CLI and stuff like that, and etc. Bunch of people are now working on it or have contributed to it. I don't know. It's something that is, if you're interested in this kind of thing, is very worth looking into and following. And yeah, I think that NPM will need to go somewhere. I don't think they survive. I think they get acquired by somebody. I don't know who that is. I think GitHub is a reasonable place for them to go, because basically the way that I see it going is somebody is going to buy the NPM official namespace, right? They are not really buying the company. Most of the talent has left at this point, or is going to leave, or is leaving. So if you buy NPM a year from now when they're running out of money, you're buying the NPM namespace and not really anything else. Hey Max, how's it going, man? So yeah, anyway, back to logging stuff out. Yeah, Travis is interesting. I don't know a lot about why Travis went down. Um, I do know that business is hard, but it's almost 90 in Oakland. Jeez. Yeah, Fahrenheit. Definitely Fahrenheit. Wow, what even is 90 Celsius? Yeah, that 194 Fahrenheit. What does water boil at? 212. So you're almost at the boiling point of water. I bet that you have a lot of problems before you hit the boiling point of water. Okay, cool. Static entry. So we're rendering back out now. Now it looks like we're just not hitting the next block of pages, which is weird. Let's do this. Let's store some local state. It doesn't really get hot in San Francisco. I think San Francisco is at like 70 right now or something like that. Yeah, it's 76, and 76 is hot for us. And you can see it's like 60 or whatever, which is like 20 something Celsius. You feel defeated by CSS after doing backend stuff and algorithms for months. Trying to get something to look decent is difficult. Yeah, that's fair. Um, you know, it's something you have to spend time on and learn if you're going to actually do it, right? Ha, we only hit 48 again. Magic number 48. Okay, these get instantiated per batch, which is interesting. Let's do this. Let's do, this is going to be batch. This is going to be I++, because this state is local to the module, and the module gets required per batch. And this is going to be batch. And this is going to be, wait, we're mapping here, right? So we have the index available to us, right? Does promise.map get the index? It's Bluebird, right? Promise.map. Nice. I didn't know that map was a top level. Promise.map. I think this is using Bluebird. I think GitHub. I think Gatsby uses Bluebird for everything. Where's promise.map? Where's the index? Function, item, index, length. Returns a promise. Reading that type signature is not my strong suit right now. An iterable or promise iterable the value of any, then a callback function that takes the item, the index, and the length. So this is the item, the index, and this is going to be batch. So now when we run this, yeah, when you close a PR and a bunch of issues get closed, yeah, that's a really great feeling. You'll register that domain. What domain are you registering? You bought a domain through Zeet's CLI and they feel pretty cool. That's dope. Yeah, I don't really use Zeet for my domain management, but oh, promise .map. I don't know if .map is an actually usable. What do you think .map is? Is it for maps? So Google owns .map and it's for mapping stuff, I guess. Don't know if you can buy it. Good luck. Let me know if you get it. Undefined. Come on. What did I do wrong here? HTML component renderer, that's a fault. Right, because this needs to go down here. The hype for .dev domains was short-lived. I think I have like cjb.dev, which I was going to use as a URL shortener, but I never got around to setting up. I think the hype around .dev domains was they launched and people could suddenly buy them, so everybody hyped and bought them. And some people are using them and some people aren't, and it's not a big deal anymore. You either have it or you don't. Yeah, there was a hype. It was mostly on Twitter. People were buying .dev domains for various things. Perception toolkit? I've never heard of it. Okay, so this batch is not what I want, actually. This batch has to come in from the render HTML, which is interesting. Oh well, this isn't going to work. It's not going to work like I wanted it to anyway. Actually, this will probably work like this. I just bought one because my firstname.com would have been over $4,000. Yes, 100%. That is a great reason to buy a .dev. I don't. My firstname.dev has got to be insane, like, or ridiculous. Let's see. What do you think it is? Where should I go to check this? I can go to Google Domains. Let's go to Google Domain Search. Okay, how much do you think this is in chat? You think it's more than 4,000 or 12K? Okay, so we got one at 12K. Anybody else got a guess for this domain? Chris.dev, 2,000, 7K, 8K. Let's find out. Chris.dev is unavailable. It's premium. So the pricing is even unavailable. That's interesting. I remember that the small first names .dev were pretty expensive. Why does it say? I thought I was going to be able to figure out the price from that. Nope. Everything, literally everything is Lars.dev whois page. Okay, let's do that. Let's go to the whois page. Who took Chris.dev? They have privacy on. Oh well. I don't know that I got it super cheap. I remember what was it? I think I waited until it dropped like maybe below 500 and scooped it up when it was maybe 100 something ish. That's why I don't know what they are now, because they are $12 per year. But when everybody was buying them, they were buying them in waves, and then the price would go down, and then the price would go down each day. WTF.dev. So it might actually be that Chris.dev is $12, except that somebody owns it. So these logs are not turning out the way that I want them to. Let's save this. Oh, that's why, because I'm I++ing it. So I just need to do I, and then this is I++. 10x engineer is not disappointing. Oh, right, I was going to check out that other page. Yeah, someone took chr.is way before I had the opportunity to take it. Well, I guess I could have taken it, but I mean, I didn't know that I could take it at that point. I wasn't even coding. Web.dev/perception toolkit. I'll get my visual searching with the perception toolkit. Oh, I don't know. I have never in my life used this, so I don't have an opinion on this because I don't know what it is and what it can do. Saying 10x.engineer. That's great. That's fantastic. For anybody that doesn't know, that's the Nginx 404 page, the default one, with an additional little message at the bottom. That's fantastic. Let's see how these logs are doing. Okay. So we're still blocking on this one. So we're blocking somewhere here. Route handler, router element, body component, API runner, API runner, body HTML, create paths to scripts, scripts and styles, API runner, scripts, page data, styles. So this is how your HTML gets chunked into a or a Gatsby HTML file, by the way, in this static entry, if anybody is interested in digging into that. Compilation hash, post body components, script mapping, body scripts. We're still putting stuff into the HTML page here, and eventually we get down to callback. And what are we actually? I think we can just log I here, right? So now we can map these back to their actual URLs without using. This is like, I think this is one of the, I don't know, most time consuming. That's not the right word. So we don't hit the callback for one of the, or is that the callback coming before the rendering? It is. Default. If that callback is coming before rendering, that means that I messed something up in where I put that, right? Nope, I did not. Interesting. So our log output is not ordered correctly. A company selling a PC that has an i9, a Titan RTX, but as well an Xbox One X, a PS4 Pro, and a Switch all in the same case. That's dope. I have a giant case, actually. I could put my Switch in the case if I wanted to. I can't put a PS4 Pro in there. I don't think there's enough space. I could probably make space, but yeah, I don't know. My case is gigantic. It fits 2 computers. And it's actually meant to fit 2 computers, but so this callback is getting logged out before render is getting called out. So this rendering, which happens at the beginning of the function, is getting logged after the callback. So that's exciting. That should not happen, right? Unless there's a problem with the incrementation. So let's do this. I know I++ does that anyway. I'm just making it explicit. But yeah, this is one of the, I guess, least informative errors that I've been that I've debugged in a long time. This is like, I have to really, really claw out every little piece of information that I learn about this. And it takes forever to log everything out and then find it and then take that little piece of information, move like a tiny step forward and then log it out. And then, so welcome to engineering, or welcome to welcome to building software products. So obviously my scoping is wrong here. engineering, aka futzing till it works. Yeah, it's like building with Legos. If Legos were not uniformly sized and didn't quite fit together, but came in uniform packages. Like if you were given a Lego and it was a Lego in a Lego shaped case, but you actually couldn't use the case, and the Lego inside was slightly broken, and like half of it was turned to the left, and you still have to figure out how to use it to build the thing that you're going to build. That's that works. Okay, so now we've got the increment happening correctly. This is interesting to me that it's 1 1 1 1 1 1. That doesn't make sense. But then suddenly it gets correct. So I don't know. Maybe one of the pools is getting blocked on the other pools. It looks like 150 never gets its callback called, so let's go find out why. I don't think there's anything that can be throwing errors here. There's no awaits, because this is not an async function, right? So if we have to await anything in this, it's not going to work. So I'm suspecting the API runners right now. Read file sync, fine. Get page data, fine. This is a route handler class, that seems fine. I'm just going to start logging out. Anywhere there's an API runner. And start running this and seeing what information that we get out of that. So we already have a pre on that one, so we're just going to do place renderer. Blah blah blah, render string, blah blah blah, styles and whatever, assets by chunk name. Oh, that's probably not our issue, but that logic, having worked with that API in Webpack, is not a fun API to work with. Okay, so we're getting through the wrapped page. At this point, basically what I'm doing is inserting logs in here until I see one not show up. Because that seems like what's happening. And I'm putting it anywhere that looks like it could be async or could be on pre-render HTML pre, or anything that looks like it could be a potential problem. And hopefully this will, hopefully one of these things will not log out, and we will be able to narrow it down after that. So it gets all the way to on render body, which is like somewhere up there. So here's why there's a ./content, ./www content, because ./content is where I used to keep my content when I wrote all of the logic for how my blog posts render and things like that, and where it's sourced from. And then when I swapped over to a theme, I had to move that content to www/content, because www is my actual Gatsby site. So I need to delete the root one and only use the www/content one. It's basically just a legacy quirk. So on pre-render HTML, we've made it to now, but we haven't made it to the callback. That is just weird, right? That's weird. So you're telling me that if I do this, and I do const HTML equals HTML my stuff, that will work? That's what that output is telling me? Let's see if this works. If this works, I'm going to be very confused. And we're going to have to dig into HTML, I think. The component. Did not work. Okay. Okay, so this is not working, but it's not. All right, Lacoste, have a good night, or morning, I guess, technically. Thanks for hanging out. HTML, my stuff. So this, let's go check the static entry before we do this. Because the callback is getting called for everything else. This is going to turn out to be something like a mistyped const name. I know it. I can feel it in my bones. Where are we putting this? Is this render page? So it should get to callback, right? There's console.log on pre-render HTML. There's nothing between it except for a string declaration. And then console.log callback I. And our output if we look at it from before, goes through everything, gets to on pre-render HTML, and then doesn't call callback. Or I guess this might be stomping that last callback call. So let me do this. Instead. The thing that bothers me is that we started out making it through 100 pages, and now we're only making it through 50. So I feel like the problem has changed while I've been debugging. Okay, so that is what's happening. So it's getting through all of them. Oh boy, that is not great. Okay. So, what we know about this, to go from the top, we know that if we replace the HTML component renderer with a simple function that returns a string, everything works. So the problem has to be in the HTML component renderer path. We know that that HTML component renderer path points to the render page file, and the render page file is built from this static entry. This static entry gets all the way to its callback every time. After it gets back to its callback, everything hangs. It looks like I need to add a little bit more information to these logs because something is getting bootstrapped twice, I think. So let's go here again, and render HTML is going to have to get called at some point. But it gets called here somewhere, right? Worker pool.render HTML. This is the segments. These are the paths, the environment variables. Let's add another one here called batch. And batch will be I, and I will be 0. But when we map over it, we'll do I++. And then in our render HTML, we will take batch, and that will tell us which batch we're in, and we'll get rid of this I, because I think the batches are actually coming from outside of this function, or this module. And that will give us batch here. And then we run this, and hopefully we get a little bit more information. And now I've been debugging this for 2 hours. Okay, let's go see if we had an effect on our initial logs, because I'm assuming that that will give us the batch number. Okay, so this is from batch number 2, this is from batch number 3, batch number 2 and batch number 3 never get going. Batch number 1 finishes. Okay. So let's look again at batch number. Okay. Anyway, we need to include the batch number into these logs, because if we don't, then we'll never be able to find out which one of these is supposed to be logging out. So here's our batch number. we'll just keep sticking it at the beginning of these logs for now. Which we totally could have done with debug, but I'm not using debug because I wanted this to be a console log. I could also use reporter if we imported reporter here, I believe, but I'm also not using that. Blah, blah, blah. I think that's pretty much it. There's two more here. So now we've got prefixed with the batch and the URL instance that we are attempting to figure out. So we'll run this again. Messed up one of my console logs. Okay, so this should do it. Very occasionally I run into these kinds of problems. Because Gatsby does a bunch of work internally, and the issue is that occasionally, especially when moving into async code execution, a promise somewhere will get missed because doing async code in JavaScript is not intuitive is the wrong word, but it's not easy to work with. Okay, so batch 2 gets to this post. It gets to wrapped page on post 6 and then fails. Where does batch 3 get to? Batch 3 gets to body component, right before the body component. Nope. 3 gets to 3, 1. So 3 gets to wrapped page, as far as I can tell. And then 2, 6. I guess 2, 6 gets to, I guess much further than that. Okay, so which one of these is the wrong one? 226, huh? Do we have a 227? We do not. So it gets to 226, it gets to wrapped page. So something after wrapped page is our issue. Right? But wrapped page can be called whenever this route handler is rendered. So it's probably getting called way down at the bottom. Because what, replace renderer and then wrapped page? So where's replace renderer? So replace renderer gets called, and then we never make it to on render body, do we? No, we don't. So something between line 280 and 233, right? It's possible. Oh no. I wonder if is redirect is swallowing this error right here. What do you think this error is? This could be it. We could have found it. Moments of truth, I guess. Moment of truth? I don't know what to call this. I'm going to eat a goldfish while I'm waiting. Because I am starting to get hungry for dinner. Turn this into an ASMR Twitch stream. Okay. Do we get an error somewhere? Doesn't look like it. So that's not it. So what do we have here? Nothing that looks async. Nothing that looks like it could stall execution. Nothing that looks like... Nothing. Got nothing. Man. Okay, so we've got this. Let's try an extra log here. Post body HTML. And then let's do another one here. And then we'll do a post on this too. And let's see what we get out of that. Man, this is a doozy. Don't know how I'm going to recreate this for like a reproduction PR. Okay, got a bunch of output. 2.26 still seems to be where we're stuck. Wrapped page still seems to be... Ooh, there we go. Body HTML, rendered string, pre, body HTML. Rendered string post never happens. Are you kidding me? Is it really... Is it this? Is that it? Is that the thing? Let's try this. This would be really interesting, I guess. I don't know what I would do about this if this was the issue. So this is basically what we're supposed to hit. So Gatsby is supposed to hit this, as long as replace render or etc. Are not used, right? So we're at like Gatsby is functioning as it's supposed to be. Oh no. That's it, guys. Render to string? Really? Okay, so now we need to know what the body component is. We need to make sure that render to string is React DOM server render to string. Okay, so render to string we're ruling out as an issue because it's a third-party library. If there was a problem there, it would be somewhere else, something else. It's got to be our body component. So it has to be the result of this, or the result of all the wrap root elements, etc. Right? So we're just going to log it out. We need the batch number on this too. Okay. Well, let's re-enable. Okay. Getting closer. Getting closer. Holy man. This is... All right, here we go. No, I messed up my log statement. Okay, let's go to 226. So React fragment, which looks like the same as the others. This is tough. This is a tough one. I don't know what to do here. About toString. Huh. So we have the wrap root element. Let me check my wrap root element for my actual blog. Right, so it's gatsby SSR at this point. Got root wrapper. It's got an element. It's got a root wrapper. It's root wrapper here. Got this context provider. We've got the MDX provider. Got some component. Nothing here should be wiling out like it is. Man. So we have a React element, I guess. Man. So if we run render to string on this body component, it just stalls. What if we did render to string on the router element without the wrap root element? Right? Because down here we're doing body HTML, right? So here, let's set body HTML to render to string body component, right? Because that's what we're doing down here. And let's do router element instead. So we've narrowed it down to there's something wrong with a wrap root element somewhere, I think. Is my wrap root element async? No. You know, okay, so we've narrowed it down a lot, right? The static entry file, if you go down to where it says render to string body component, it never passes this line. So, WTF. I am moving forward with the assumption that render to string cannot be the problem, which means that the body component has to be the problem. And the body component is constructed via the wrap root elements here. So right now what I'm doing is removing all of the wrap root elements and rendering to string the router element, which successfully results in an actual error. And at this point, I'm wondering if there's a wrap root element or there's an issue with the API runner where one of the wrap root elements that comes in is async and it's not getting awaited. Because router element works and throws an error. So now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the API runner and see what it's doing or see what's going on. Gatsby, no, not Gatsby dist. I need cache. So cat www.cache. API runner SSR. This will include a bunch of things in it because this file gets the list of plugins written into it. And we have something for the API not existing. We have something for mapping over each plugin. Each plugin gets to call itself on the thing with the options and get returned. There is no async handling stuff here. So my question is, do we have a plugin that has a wrap root element that is labeled as async? So I have a Gatsby SSR on my site that is not async that we just checked. Gatsby plugin feed has one that is probably not async. I'm going to check Gatsby plugin web mention, even though it was working because I wrote Gatsby plugin web mention. And then Gatsby plugin MDX, I'm also going to suspect because I also wrote that. And then theme UI is going to be the last thing that I sort of suspect. So let's do a cat on this SSR first. Oh, LinkedIn. I got an email that I got a month of free LinkedIn Premium because you're an active member, which is a straight out lie. I almost never use LinkedIn. But you're an active member. You have an account. You're technically active. No, I think that LinkedIn's marketing strategy is a bunch of bupkis. For sure. Okay. So I guess let's start with Gatsby plugin web mention. Okay. This is not async, as far as I can tell. Let's go for round 2. Let's go for I wonder if something changed in. So if it was Gatsby plugin MDX, other people would be running into this issue. All right, there's no async here. There is no async stuff. So now we're down to, I don't know, Gatsby plugin theme UI maybe. And I'm basically just making an educated guess on all of this. So on render body happens here, which is interesting. Wrap root element is in source provider, so we'll go check that. So that's the thing that we care about. Again, not async. Starting to get, I don't know. Whew. This is a bug for sure. This is a thing that is really confusing and not useful. Okay. Let's do this. I don't think this will work actually because components reference their parents, but we'll try it for a second. It's really, really crazy to me that this is... Because body component is a object when we're going to render it. So we're successfully constructing some object that we then go to use in render to string, and render to string never returns. And I really don't want to start digging into React itself because I don't think that that's the problem. Oh man. Don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. Please don't do this to me. Okay. This is going like that. And this is getting this. Okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. This is hello, new people. We are debugging something deep, deep, deep in Gatsby internals. So if you have questions about Gatsby, I'm happy to answer them because I've been working on it for a very long time. If you do not have questions or comments, then we are debugging something that is quite difficult to debug. So there's a lot of console logging. There's a lot of questioning what the logic is actually doing. So this is from Gatsby plugin theme UI. Okay, so this is going to be so much output that we're going to need to redirect it to a file. Wonder if we can just cat it to the screen. Now we get literally every update to the terminal. Because the way that the Gatsby CLI works is it uses ink to rewrite over other lines on the terminal. And the reason we're seeing so many additional lines here is because it can't rewrite because we're just catting it out. So instead of rewriting, it's actually just giving us a new line every time. Okay. So here we go. Looks like the same component as the other ones. Couple links. We do need to find the particular chat that we've been, or particular iteration that we've been looking at to tell whether it's broken or not. Which is 226. This is a lot of output, so maybe I can rerun this and I might have to trim down the output such that the first batch isn't running. 140, 141, 144, 146. Now we're stuck on building static HTML for pages forever. So maybe what we do instead of this is we make sure that this batch, or this log, if it's part of the second batch, that's the only time we log it, so that we don't get so much output. So we're going to wait through this a little bit again. We're going to get batch 1 should no longer print out the additional information. Batch 2 should, and batch 3 also will not. So hopefully, let's see, this is 2.1, good. We do need to make it to 2.26 because that's the one that is not making it through the entire pipeline. So they're on 130. Let's see, this is 2.6. Did 2.6 fail this time? Huh. Okay. This looks like a normal component to me. It doesn't look like there's anything interesting. So I'm not really sure why this is failing. We do get to body component pre. And then we get to this log and we never get to body component. Do we? Or actually, we don't know that because building static HTML for pages stomps over all of our output. Blur. Okay, this is not great. Narrowed it down to a problem with wrap root element. Do not know why. Okay. I'm not sure where to go from here, actually. This API runner is the problem, or not the API runner itself, but the component that is returned from the API runner. And then when we go to render to string on that body component that's returned from the API renderer, it hides or something. I don't know. Let's do some logs inside of this API runner thing. And let's get rid of this log because this log is no longer useful to us. and it's actually very, very noisy. That will probably spam us a little bit. I don't think that I care. I think that I'm just going to run it. Actually, let's clear this first so that we get a little bit. There we go. Yeah, so again, the problem is that this render to string halts the entire execution, halts everything. So we can't we never return from this function. And because we never return from this function, it has to be inside of body component, and body component is constructed actually there was a replace renderer, so I wonder if that's part of the issue too. But right now what we're looking into is wrap root element. And we can go back to 226 and we get body component, wrap root element gets called a couple times, body component, replace renderer, render to string, wrapped page. So we stop at wrapped page, right? Which is this. This is inside of the route handler component. The route handler component only gets rendered so this log actually should come later, but if we look at the other valid ones, we end up with, where are we? Body component pre. All right, so we end up with body component pre, wrap root element 4 times, body component, replace renderer pre, replace renderer, which is there, body HTML render to string pre, wrap page pre, and then I'm assuming wrapped page is there. What is wrap page here? Yeah, so if wrapped page is there, then wrap page element is not an issue. And this is, yeah, like I said, one of the most confusing bugs that I've seen so far. Man. So it's body HTML render to string pre, wrapped page pre. I don't know if it goes to wrapped page post because Gatsby stomps our output, or ink does technically. But since this is the first output in a line of new output, right? So if we look at, where is it? Actually, it's not the first, is it? We get body component pre is the first. $139 hits what first? Body component pre. So body component pre is the first. So that's our first, and it only makes it to wrapped page pre. It might make it to wrapped page if this doesn't stomp on us. Because that's the same thing as making it here, and then this could be the stomping that happens. We definitely don't make it through body HTML render to string post, which is down here. So we got render to string pre, and this never happens. but render to string pre does. Right? So my assumption is that we're getting through, we're doing body HTML render to string pre. We execute render to string on the body component. The body component then hits wrapped page, which is here. Inside of this route handler component. We hit wrapped page pre, it goes through, we hit wrapped page, we return wrapped page. That is the render for our router. The router is this. So we get create element router, gatsby focus, class ID or whatever, the route handler. So we've got server location, then we've got route handler inside of it. This router element is what becomes, where are we? Yeah, this router element is what becomes our actual body component. So when we do wrap root element, the router element is what gets passed through. So that's basically the element that is our site. We hit wrap root element 4 times when we run that function. And then we get through here, and then we have to render to string. Where's body HTML originally declared? Body HTML is originally an empty string. It becomes nothing. Until we have to render that router component. And then that router component never finishes. And I don't know why. Yep, so there's our router component. It gets created here. It gets passed through the wrap root elements. That's all fine. Let's just make sure that wrapped page is getting shown. So we'll get an extra wrapped page element here. Because if it's not, then we have a little bit more information. It kind of sucks that the logic for this passes through so many files, but you know, Gatsby is a big system at this point, so I think I'm okay with that generally. Here we go. Once again, looking at the amazing amount of output that we get. 226, we do get to wrapped page, so we make it through the wrapped page. The wrapped page is what the render function is for the route handler, so that works fine. So route handler successfully renders, which means that the problem is above route handler, you think? I think it's in router. Router is like reach router though, right? Yeah, router comes directly from reach router. Woof, this is not a great one. Do we hit body component? Yes, we do. Replace renderer pre, replace renderer. We get body HTML render to string pre, and we never hit post. But we also don't get error. So that's my confusion. We hit body HTML render to string pre, render to string renders and runs and works, and we don't hit error, and we don't hit post body HTML. And we let's do this. Let's throw new error, our error. Let's just see if that throws, because maybe it's getting swallowed in some other way, some weird indirection. Perfect. So that does get thrown and does get logged, and we do actually log it out. So if there is an error that gets thrown in render to string, we would see it, as far as I can tell. But there is no error. And also, we never see this console lock. So this is really, really confusing. So let's do something slightly different. Let's see if we can confirm that this is an issue in a brand new project. Gatsby new. Something. If it is a wrap root element, I'm so confused as to why it works 50 times and then fails. It actually works more than 50 times, right? It works 50 plus 26 for the next batch plus like 6 for the next batch. So there is a single place where this problem is happening. Let's do yarn build. At the same time, I'll open up a new code workspace. We'll go into Gatsby SSR, and I will do exports dot wrap root element equals element, and this return like ID equals my element, and then element here. Okay, so let's start with that. That should still build. And then exactly what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to an async function and see what happens. React is not defined. Okay, that's fine. Dislike that there's an ESLint process in here, but okay. React from React, blah, blah, blah. Cool. Done. Builds. And now let's do this. And really what I want to do is I want to remove this return and cause this wrap root element to never do anything and see what happens to the build. Invariant error for React when we use async for this. Okay. Let's do because okay, so that can't be really the issue then, if that's the case. So now I'm really confused and I really have no idea what the problem is, because making it an async function doesn't do anything different. Man, I really, really, really don't know. Now I'm very confused. If we replace this render to string, everything works. If we don't, everything fails, which means that the issue is just rendering this body component. And this body component is constructed of wrap root element and wrap page element and the router. So holy, this is confusing. I may need to go like super like E to E debugging mode and just start removing plugins and see what happens. Okay, one last time through route handler before we do that. So we have this class route handler, has a bunch of props, does a create element. I guess my light is about to go out or just went out, so I need a new light. Maybe I look more dramatic lit from just one side now. Okay, so then we have create element. Create element works through these components and the props and gives us a page element. The page element is passed through the API runner and returned. Okay? The returned element doesn't matter because we end up with this router element, which is not route handler yet. Router element is a create element on server location. Server location comes directly from reach router. Right? Directly from reach router. Gives us the URL with the base path and the page path. The children of that create element is a router with the props ID and base URI. And the children of that is our route handler that handles any path. Okay. So now we get to constructing the body component. We construct the body component by running wrap root element and passing in the router element that we just constructed through all of the plugins. So then we get an actual body component with all of the wrap root elements and all of the wrap page elements applied to it, right? Did we do page elements yet? Page elements are in the route handler. Yes. Then we run it through replace renderer. And replace renderer can change all of these functions, but doesn't do anything to the component as far as I remember. The only place that I can think of that runs a replace renderer is Gatsby plugin theme UI. Right? So here, on render body, and it sets a script. Fine. Doesn't matter. Should not do anything interesting. Finally, we get that body component, and if nobody has generated body HTML yet, which nobody has, we render that component to a string, and we never get out of this function. And I have no idea. I got nothing. It has to be a wrap page element or a wrap root element issue. I am unable to ascertain exactly where. I think the next place that we would need to log stuff out is in the API runner, but the API runner runs fine. So the issue is that we have this lazy component that we're creating. We're constructing it via this API runner. It works when we construct it because it doesn't run, and then we run it later, and when we run it later, it breaks. And it breaks in a way that does not allow render to string to return. And that is just so bizarre. Okay, I don't think I'm going to solve this on stream today. Let's get back out of that. I don't think that I'm going to solve this on stream today. So, yeah, I think I'm going to kill the stream now and find somebody to raid quickly and go get dinner, because I need a moment to think about what could possibly be going wrong here. And if I figure it out, I'll bring it up on the next stream and tell you all. Let me not re-record my... because that is just so bizarre. Also, this cannabis plant beats me in viewers every day. Did y'all like the Unity game dev that we did the other day? All right, well, that's going to be it for this stream, y'all. This issue, I have no idea how to fix, so I'm going to bring it to more of the other Gatsby people and see if I can get some insight. And I will see you on Friday. Later.